Well, very cool. It's a pleasure to welcome to the show Syracuse goalie, starting goalie, Kimber Hower. Kimber, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I'd love to hear the story of when you first jumped into goal. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think I was in fifth grade. I started playing field, and then kind of like a lot of goalie stories, they didn't have a goalie. I always wanted to be a catcher in softball. So I like ran up to my mom and I was like, can I try it? And she was like, go for it. And then that was like the first time I started playing goalie. So
Yeah, and you grew up in Utah, yeah? That doesn't scream to me lacrosse mecca, but I don't know. Tell me a little bit about Utah lacrosse.
yeah, it definitely doesn't scream Mecca. It is getting better though. It's developing. It was we have like youth programs, so I started playing youth, but I got into it because of my brother, because boys lacrosse there is bigger. And then once I got into the women's side, it wasn't as developed. So then that's when I switched to playing men's lacrosse in Utah.
Very nice. So you were out there running around with the boys.
Yeah, I was trying. I was a little small, but it worked out when I got older. So
Now, is that when you first jumped into goal with the boys or no?
no, I started with girls, but then my brother would shoot on me, and then his friends would shoot on me, and then it just went from there. So
Yeah. So, and you wanted to be a softball catcher. So what is it about projectiles coming your way that you like so much?
I think it was the gear, honestly. I thought the gear was so cool. I thought the helmet was cool. I was like, you gotta like throw it on and like whip it off. And I always thought like it was such a unique position that everyone like noticed because of it stood apart from everyone else. So I think there was always something about that that always piqued my interest.
Yeah, the gear is super cool, especially in women's lacrosse. Like it's very different than the field players, right? So you get to stand out in that way and be in the spotlight, which is something I love. Not all goalies love that, or not all people love that, but I think a lot of goalies do like being in the spotlight. Is that the case for you?
I wouldn't say necessarily I like being in the spotlight. I think I the um like the job description of being a goalie. It's very high intense position. You have to, be successful in very intense situations and be able to handle pressure. And I think for me, pressure is something I've always like craved a little bit. So I think, the responsibilities that come along with it are something that of why I particularly liked goalie. But obviously it has its positives and negatives to it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good job description, by the way. Yeah, I mean, it is like little short bursts of pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a tremendous like pursuit to like go like seek those situations. And what a great like vehicle to do so than being a lacrosse goalie. So I think you can, I mean, this is a lacrosse goalie show, so we're like amongst all these goalies, but it's a great thing to try and be like just a better person. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna run into challenges, and we'll talk about some of those in a second. But it's just, yeah, I mean, in terms of just bettering yourself as a person, I think that trying to be a great goalie or even just have success in this sport is a great pursuit. So, and speaking of which, so then how did you jump into goal? I guess you like it. Maybe you're good at naturally. Like, how did you go about learning how to make saves?
Um, I think I just threw myself in the goal and I just naturally started doing it. I never had any instruction. But I went and watched my brother play and I watched the men's goalies plays, and that's honestly where I started learning about it. And picking up men's tendencies very early on, I think really shaped the kind of playing style I have now, and then end up playing men's lacrosse. So, I really think that like I credit that the most.
What would you call a men's tendency as a goalie? Would that be like an example? Like when I watch you play, like a lot of low saves, you get your body down there, like you get your knees behind the ball, kind of throw your body behind it. Would that be a tendency, or what are some examples?
I don't like to say now, at least, that I think that my style of play is more like men's, because I think there's so many different styles now that go around with women's goalies. But I think back then it was out of the norm, like to drop to your knees. Everyone kept saying like, oh, you play like a boy because of how you do get in front of the ball. And women used to play a lot more mechanical and very like, we're trained very differently, I think. So I think that I would say it's more of a men's tendency, but now I would just say it's my style of play. I would eliminate the men's tendency part.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. There's so many styles, and you're starting to see a lot of girls play like quote unquote guys, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, I've seen guys that have like, some more narrow stances that you might stereotypically think is a girl. That's kind of how girls set up, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I've seen girls do the wide base stance, so it really like depends on the goalie and your frame and how you play. And there's a lot of different ways to have success. That's kind of one of my main theories of this position. And it sounds like you agree.
yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah. What about like early sticking points? Any early problems? I mean, I know when I first started, like being scared of the ball and like flinching was like my main one. That's probably the most common one for lacrosse goalies because it's just not a natural thing. But does anything come to mind for you or like right when you were getting started?
Yeah, I actually vividly remember when I started playing guys, I played field and goalie. So I would play half of the game as a field player as a midi, and then the other half I would play as a goalie in the women's side. And then in the men's side, I would only play a full game of goalie. But I remember when I switched over to men's, I was so scared of the ball. And like when you're in a game, it's better, but it was more like practices for me. And when my brother would shoot on me, like I would want him to use tennis balls, and he was like, I'm not using tennis balls on you. Like you have to get over this fear. And I was like so young, but I think that definitely helped. But it was more just like I think all goalies when they're younger are a little scared of the ball, unless, I mean, there's a few that aren't, but I definitely was for a little bit in elementary school, but then got over it once I got older.
Yeah. I mean, just through reps, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's like you've got this rubber projectile coming at you. You're wearing very little padding.
Yeah.
And it's just not a natural thing, like your
No,
natural reaction is to kind of curl up and close your eyes and have that fear response. And you've got to just train that out of your system with reps.
I agree.
And the tennis balls can help, but it sounds like your brother was not into that. Huh?
He wasn't.
Trial by fire, Kimber.
Yeah, it was trial by fire.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. But I always recommend kids start out with the tennis balls because, it's just like, there's even in certain drills to this day, like with college kids, I recommend tennis balls because, you take a beating in there and like you get hit in the thigh and you're having a great training session. And then you're just like, oh man, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree. Tennis balls are actually a big part of my training regimen now, and I'm very grateful for them. So.
Yeah. Now, do you pad up in practice? Are you wearing anything on the legs or no regular goalie padding?
Well, I wear sweatpants, but underneath my sweatpants, I have like the small hex pad that you can't see, but it's like a very thin padding, but I think it helps. Sometimes if it's like inner like calf, like it sometimes helps relieve a little of the pressure, but my freshman year, I didn't wear anything. And then as I started like getting older, I was like, I maybe should wear a pad or two to be able to get through all my years in college. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It takes a toll on the legs. And you talk to, some of these guys that in the pro league who've been doing it for, 20 years. And like, they'll tell you stories about how screwed up their shins are and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
have you always worn the sweatpants? I love that look, by the way. I'm a big sweatpants goalie. Tucked into the socks, keep it nice and clean,
Yeah. I wore them in high school. Like my sophomore year I started, but I only played 2 years of high school lacrosse. But once I switched to sweatpants, I wore them in all weathers and I didn't care. I loved them. I think maybe it was more of like a comfort thing. And then it just stuck and it doesn't really bother me anymore in any type of weather. So I just have never gone back.
Yeah, and you get that extra millimeter of fabric and
It helps. I've made some saves because of my sweatpants. And I'm like, I don't know why you wouldn't want to if, it can help.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, exactly. All weather. I was an all weather sweatpants goalie too.
yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned you only played 2 years of high school lacrosse. Why is that?
My junior year, I stopped playing because I was asked by my coaches at Carolina, like it was a mutual decision between us that I would graduate high school a year early. So I took a regular junior course load with like APs plus 13 online classes to graduate a year early. So I didn't really have time to play high school lacrosse. So I just trained on the men's side in my free time. And then that's where it went from there. So
Whoa, what an amazing story. So back it up a little bit. You get recruited by UNC, right? And this is, I guess, before the rule. Like the rule now is they can't recruit you until I think, or can't even contact you until like September 1st of your junior year.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
this is before the rule. So tell me about like how, your recruiting process went.
Yeah, my recruiting process was very unique. Being from Utah, you can't just like drive to a tournament in Maryland and have coaches watch you or go to your high school games and watch you. So I went to a tournament when I was in 8th grade, and we got film from it. And my coaches, without telling me, sent out the film to like the top 10 coaches in the country. And I had no idea they were going to do that, because when I first started, I was like, oh, like maybe I'll like go D2, D3. I knew nothing honestly about college lacrosse. So when they did that, we heard back from like 6 of them in 24 hours. And I was like, I didn't know what to do, because my coaches didn't know either, because we were all inexperienced in the recruiting world. But, my top 3 schools were Carolina, Duke, and Syracuse. So, I was going into my freshman year of high school when this all happened. And, Gary came out and visited me in Utah, which is by far one of the coolest things I think I can ever say to this day. I'm very grateful for that. And then, I went to Carolina, went on a camp visit there, loved it. And then went on a visit at Duke, which is also a beautiful school as well. So, but it was a very quick process. I think I was committed by the winter of my freshman year before I started playing in high school even. So it was very fast.
That is amazing. So you must, as a freshman or going into your freshman year. So, I mean, you must have lit it up at that camp.
I mean, I honestly don't remember. I think I was so nervous that I was just like, I hope they like me. But I was just playing to have fun. And I think going back to like playing under pressure, I think, when I knew coaches were watching me, I would always play better, because I think it added a little bit more of pressure, which I have always really liked in a weird way. So.
Interesting. Yeah. Cause a lot of times goalies will tell me like, I've got a huge game on Saturday. Like, so many coaches are going to be there, or like the one college coach of the school I want to go to is going to be there. And they're like feeling these nerves. And so I ask goalies like you, like, well, when you go to those big camps, like, do you feel those nerves? And if so, like, how do you deal with it? How do you recommend these kids deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's normal to feel those nerves. I don't think I've met very many people that don't have them, especially as goalies. For me, having nerves almost makes me dial in a little bit more and focus on the ball more, because it like helps me narrow in on my one job. But that took a lot of practice. And for me over the years, one thing I've had to do is just focus on my job and not worrying about other people or the defense, or like, outward things that could be maybe distractions. So, I think it's definitely trial and error, and, you're never going to play perfect, and, goals are going to go in. So I think when you have like those high intense situations, the more calm you are, the better it goes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes training. And I would say that like, if you can try and replicate those high pressure situations in practice as much as possible.
Yeah.
So you get used to it, right? Because there's like stress works on this continuum where like, if you don't have any, that's not a good thing either. Cause like you said, you need a little bit of that excitement to get into it. Otherwise it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then when you get on the far end of the spectrum, like when you have too much stress, it kind of, you can't play well. And so you got to find that happy medium. And I think that comes with practice.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've heard, and I now replicate, I don't think I've had a single original coaching idea in this whole Lax Goalie Rat thing. I just steal from different sources. But one of the coaches said, stress and excitement are really the same thing, like in your body. Like your heart will speed up a little bit, maybe your palms get a little sweaty. And so, but they're very different psychologically. Stress is kind of this like negative thing. Like, how do I get rid of this stress? Excitement is a positive thing. Like, yeah, of course I'm excited to play. This is amazing. I love this sport. Can't wait to get out there. And so kind of reframing that stress as excitement, I think helps a lot of kids. So.
Oh yeah. And it's helped me, like even this year, sometimes like before we would have a game, like the night before, I would get really nervous, and I'm just like, is it like, am I stressed out? Like, am I not enjoying this? And then I just tell myself, I'm like, no, like these are excitement nerves. I'm like ready to go. Like, it's more of an anxious, like I just want to play kind of thing. So I definitely believe in reframing words to help you is a huge psychological benefit.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. So back to the story. So then you commit to UNC, and then they need a goalie, like not your graduating year, but the year before. And so you guys kind of decide, all right, I'm gonna do 2 years in one academically and graduate a year early. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was
Wow.
also coming where I came from, they thought, well, I redshirted my freshman year. So we did have another goalie, Elise Hennessy. She was a great goalie at Carolina, very successful career when she played. So coming in, I think they also wanted me to learn from both of her and Taylor and just have a year to redshirt, get experience under my belt so I wouldn't be a true freshman when I could finally play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was also part of like the thought process behind it.
Interesting. And how was that for you academically? Because I gotta say, like, I took AP classes like my senior year and 1 year's worth, and it was a lot. It was a lot of work, right? And that can be stressful as well. So, like, how did you handle that workload?
I mean, that's why I couldn't play lacrosse, I think, regular season. So, but something my parents always instilled in me was academics before athletics. And I was very lucky with that because a lot of kids, aren't taught to have a drive in school sometimes because sports can sometimes overpower that. So, they were just like, as long as you're doing well in school, like we don't care what you do. So I had really good time management skills from a very young age. And I loved school. Like I'm a perfectionist in all areas of my life, not just lacrosse. So I think I was also very competitive in the classroom and I always wanted to be the best. And that would be like, whether that be getting all A's or like, studying. And, I didn't really do a whole lot on the weekends because of my workload. So it was a very big commitment, but I was very, very determined to make it happen.
Awesome. What advice would you give a young kid going through the recruiting process in 2022?
Yeah. I mean, the rules are so different now. But I think enjoy it. I feel like kids get so caught up now and like stressed and like, well, I don't know where I want to go. Like I'm being told this by my coach. I'm being told this by my parents. I would just say like, take a second to do your own research and be like, what do you want? Because I think so many times kids are told what they should want. So, like maybe if a kid doesn't want to play at a super high D1 level, like maybe they want to focus more on their academics, like that's totally okay. But, you have to make those decisions for yourself and, vocalize them. And I think, that would help a lot of kids out if they were taught that more.
Love that. Love that. It's great. So you get to UNC and, your first kind of dose of college athletics and, you got great goalies above you. What would you say you learned the most during that first year?
I think, I mean, I was 17 when I got to college, so I was a baby. I think the biggest thing I learned was how to manage my emotions as a D1 athlete. I think it was so overwhelming that I struggled so much at times because I just didn't know how to talk about like how I was feeling. And I think from the other goalies, like finding outlets and, talking to your teammates and making those connections was very, very important. And I learned from Elise specifically my freshman year, because I wasn't like obviously competing to play in a game. She really showed me that like, connections off the field are very, very beneficial and like your mental health, which I'm very, very grateful for because she was very outspoken about that. So I think for me, those were the biggest things my freshman year.
Yeah. What was overwhelming? Help me understand that, because I've heard that quite a bit. I never played Division I sports, so I'm not coming from that background. So I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. You wake up if you have 7 or 8 a.m. lift, you wake up at 6:30 every day. You go to lift, then you go to 3-4 classes as a freshman. Classes are really hard. They were very hard at Carolina, especially. So, learning how to work with professors and do that. And then you also have to do all this extra work of like paperwork, blood work, all this stuff when you first get to school. So you have a million appointments to do. And then on top of that, you have your first practice, which everyone's always terrified as a freshman for your first practice in collegiate athletics because, it's so different, so much faster, it's so much more intense. So that plus, then recovery and then figuring out when to eat on your own, your parents aren't there to do your laundry, to take care of you. And, so I think it's such a big adjustment in a way that it just, everything feels overwhelming, especially I was 17, I was a baby when I went in. So, I definitely think another year of high school would have helped, but I figured it out. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. You're still a baby. How old are you now?
I'm 21.
21. All right. A little older,
I
but
still have a couple more years left.
yeah, I'm 41. So you're still a baby if you ask me. So there you go. Yeah. And yeah, I identify with a lot of what you said there, minus the D1, like being on your own, in college, it can be, for the first time, can be very overwhelming, let alone, all of the time commitments that you have being a D1 athlete. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So then you penned an article related to mental health. Is this kind of timing wise? Is this kind of when that story starts?
Yeah, I definitely think it started my freshman year and, built up to when I wrote that first letter to myself. But, I think growing up, my perfectionism and my anxiety always like maybe built up a little bit to that. And like being in that environment definitely like intensified it a lot. So.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the perfectionism because, it's an interesting balance because lacrosse goalies can't be perfect. And I mean, very rarely do you have shutouts, right? Like 50%, 60% is a great save percentage for goalies. And how do you balance that? You're a perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist in certain ways too. And it's tough, right? Because then you give up a goal and all of a sudden, like, I'm not perfect anymore. And I'm curious how you went about balancing that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have to admit, I went a long time with not balancing it well at all. I had to have people very close to me sit me down and be like, you have to stop being so hard on yourself because it's preventing you from getting to the level you should be at, that you can be at. So, having those hard conversations and, I'm a firm believer in talking to sports psychologists. I think it's been, for me, one of the most beneficial things throughout my entire college career. So, them sitting down and being like, all right, control the controllables, which is my biggest motto the past couple of years, has been super helpful because I'm like, all right, a goal went in. What can you control? You can control your reaction. You can control IPR, which we call instant positive reaction, and then going to the next one. And, I by no means do that perfectly every time. We all get frustrated. We all, that perfectionism comes out, and which can lead to frustration. But I think, learning to manage that over time just helps you mature as a goalie, and as a person as well.
Yeah, control the controllables. I talk about that quite a bit and post about that in some of my articles, and kind of even just go so far as to like, here are things that are not controllable, right? Like the outcome of the game.
Yeah, not control.
You can't control. I mean, yeah, like goalies influence that, and maybe if you play good, you can influence it, but you don't have that, pure control. Your reaction to giving up a goal, 100% you control that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what IPR, I'd love to hear more about that. Instant positive reaction. What is that? What are some examples?
Yeah, so our team at Syracuse is very big on IPR. Like after a goal goes in, sometimes like the people on the bench like scream like IPR at the same time. I think for that, it can be in all scenarios. It could be like, all right, if we did a turnover, if they scored a goal, or like if we got a yellow card in a game, like would be on the same page of like saying IPR, because it's kind of just like a flush, like a Nemo mentality, I guess you could say. Like, all right, forget about it, on to the next. You can't let it influence, how you go forward, and like let it build with your frustration. So, that's something we definitely tried to focus on this year, which has helped me a lot.
Yeah. That makes tons of sense. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cliche on this podcast, but that short-term memory and kind of moving on to the next play is just, it's crucial. Like it's cliche for a reason, and you got to fine tune that skill. And it kind of sounds like that's what the IPR is all about.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific routine that you go through when you give up a goal?
Yeah, I do actually. So if a goal goes in, depending on like I knew like, all right, maybe the defense broke down in this certain area, or if it's like one where I'm like, I should have saved that. I either do one of two things. Sometimes I crouch down and I put my hand on the ground, which is it's a little odd, but it helps. It's like in psychology, it's proven that if you like touch something to like try and ground yourself to get in the present moment, it like really helps. And I do that, and like I take a deep breath, and then I stand up again, and then I'm on to the next one. Or I'm holding my stick and I just tap the butt of my stick to be like, it's like my reset button that I do sometimes. So like, all right, next one over, can't control it. And then, yeah, so it's like, the crouching, take a deep breath, meditation sort of thing, and then just hitting the bottom of my stick. So different, but they work for me. So
yeah. And it hits on a lot of things that I think goalies should do. I mean, I think you should do something physical, whether that's tapping the stick, crouching down, deep breath. I think you should always deep breath, because the breath is so key. The only thing that you don't do that I've heard other goalies, and maybe you do is just some sort of verbal saying something to yourself. I've heard some goalies have like a positive sort of expression that they would say. Do you do that? No.
I say it in my mind. I don't really say it out loud, but I do actually, before games start, I have like a little book that my teammates see me like walking around with. It's like a little notebook, and I go off into like kind of like a quieter area before the game starts, and I write 5 affirmations and a goal. And then in the game, like if something isn't going right, I'll say those affirmations over in my head.
Can you share those affirmations?
Yeah, I think so. The first one off the top of my head is, I'm confident in my ability. The second one is, if it's like something I want to work on and be like, I'm good at 1v1s and tracking the ball. One of them could be like, I have fast hands or something. And then another one is, what was it? I think it was along the lines of, I'm patient. That was something I really had to work on this year.
Yeah.
And then for like the goal, it would change throughout the year. But something that Kayla, trainer, my coach, said to me after I didn't have a very good game against Florida, she just sent me a text and she was like, play with joy in your heart. And that for me started being my goal for the rest of the season, which is just play with joy.
That's a great goal.
Yeah.
That's a great goal. Yeah. I think when you play with joy and love for the sport, like we play better, just period. So yeah. And I think a lot of times too, like over time, through a variety of situations, whether it be just a lot of pressure you're feeling or just what have you, like you kind of lose the love of the game. And kind of going back to those letters that you wrote yourself, we never really dug into that, but kind of the first one, you talked about having a lot of resentment. So take me through kind of what was going on in your mind when you wrote that first letter to yourself.
Yeah, that first letter, I was in a very dark period. And I'm like very good at talking about it now because I got help. I had teammates that were very supportive of it. And some of my best friends at Carolina, they knew I was struggling because, I came in and then COVID happened, which was really hard for a lot of people. And then, I came back and I was like, I'm already a junior. I have X amount of eligibility left and I don't even enjoy what I do. So like, why am I doing this? And, it was more like you put all this effort into a sport and you want so badly for what, you envision for your future to work out correctly. And, when it doesn't, it's so hard. And goalies itself, it's such an isolating position because not many people understand it, I guess you could say. And those that do, I feel like a lot of people go through the same stuff, but we just don't really talk about it out loud. So, for me, when I wrote that letter, it came from a place of like, all right, like I've worked so hard to get to this program and, I wasn't the starting goalie and I had a great goalie above me, but I was like, she has a lot more years of eligibility because of COVID and she also had a redshirt year. So I was like trying to figure out my future if, like, am I okay being in this position for the rest of my career? And it was a really, really hard place for me to try and be like, or, I wrote it in the letter, but I was like, do I walk away from this table of people that, have invested so much time and love into me and, kind of not in a selfish way, but really go after what I've wanted ever since I was a little girl. So, that was a lot of hard, thoughts and conversations that had to happen, but yeah, that's kind of where it's come from.
Interesting. What, unfortunately, a lot of goalies struggle with mental health, right? There's been some that have even taken their own lives. Shame, absolute shame. And, if someone's feeling that way, like where do they start? Like, how do I, if they're having some of those feelings that you said, where do we start? What do you recommend?
I think the biggest thing is as goalies, you're taught to be mentally tough. Like it's ingrained in you since you're so little, like, you're getting balls thrown at you, right? So you're naturally not a normal person, I think, to be able to do that stuff. So I think when we kind of treat mental health the same way we treat getting a ball thrown at us. We're just like, tough it out, like you're fine. And I think that leads to not talking about it. And then, it just builds up a lot. And like, it broke my heart to see these past year, the Binghamton goalie, he took his own life. And then seeing Katie Meyer, I saw those stories and I was like, I know so many people who've been in the same place. Not that I know what they were going through, but I know so people who've been in the same place that they've considered doing that because they feel like they can't talk to anyone. And on campus, there's so many shortages of psychologists and sports psychologists. There's a 2-month waiting list, largely at a lot of universities. So it's like, who do you talk to if you can't talk to anyone, right? So, it's hard. And I think a place to start, is improving that section at universities. And, I think goalies should have their own mental training as is in every program because it's such a hard position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sent an email out to my list the other day and said, hey, I'm here. I'm sure you are as well. Like if there's any goalie out there that's struggling and they feel like, I need to talk to somebody and I don't know who that is. I said, look, listen, the lacrosse goalie community is very small. It's very small and everyone will help you. So reach out, like, I'll help you. I know what Brad Gigliotti, Goalies Matter, is doing is kind of bringing awareness to this as well. A lot of people will help. So if you're listening to this and feeling some of those thoughts, like reach out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't pretend to have all the answers. Like that's the thing as well, right? Like I'm not a mental health expert, but I think even just like starting to talk about it, like is so therapeutic for the person talking about it, right?
Absolutely. And I think it normalizes it. And, when I was younger, if I would have saw like a goalie in front of me who talked about, how they felt, I think it would have made me feel a lot more normal. And, one of my good friends is Madison, who's a Northwestern goalie. And sometimes I just call her and I'm like, do you feel this way sometimes? Like about like lacrosse and about like your mental health? And she's like, absolutely.
Right.
But, I think having those people and having those conversations is what's helped me. And I think the people I know play goalie the most.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so true for everything. Like I do online business with this lacrosse goalie training, and there's just certain days where you're like, I'm just in a funk, and like I can't like. And you talk to someone who also does it, and he's like, yeah, that happens to me all the time. And you're like, oh, whew, all right, So I think just hearing that from another person, it lets you know that like, all right, this is normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing too that someone said to me is like, it's not, it feels like when you're in a slump, right? It feels like it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
But it passes, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're in it, it's like, oh man, this is never going to go away.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you had experience with that.
Yeah. I mean, in the letters I wrote, I even talked about that. I was like, I prefaced it with, a year. In the bottom of my intro, I said a year can make so much of a difference in your life. And when I was in that dark period, I didn't, think that anything was going to change. I was like, I wasn't doing what I was setting out to accomplish. So, I was resenting lacrosse for that. And I, in turn, started resenting myself. And I think going into those deep slumps, the only way to get out of them is time, unfortunately, and the right people to help pull you out of it. But like, whether it be something serious like that or something simple like I had a bad game, going on to the next game, you just have to have people hold you accountable. Like I lean on my teammates, and I think for me that's been the biggest thing that's helped get me out of those slumps.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And then you even look back at it too, and you're like, man, I'm really grateful I went through that because guess what? Like it's made me a better person, Yeah. Like what's that expression? Like the calm seas doesn't make a great sailor. Like you've got to have a little bit of rockiness and get through that. And now like, great, I'm a better person for it. So yeah, that's awesome. And then you penned the second letter. What was it, like 2 years later? I guess just this year.
I wrote it this winter.
And it's back. The love for lacrosse is back. It's kind of the gist I got out of it. But tell me about that second letter.
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very fortunate to come into a program where I have coaches that, having like the home life that I have, they very much knew how to deal with it, which was very, very helpful. And, you know, I think that being surrounded by people where they had experience in those areas, and also like for them though, it was much like the culture at Syracuse is fun before anything else, and that, you know, that's enjoying the game. And we have 3 girls on our team who are Indigenous, you know, they're Native American, and coming here and in the fall, they made speeches where they're like, this is just more than a game. Like, it's not just something you come do. It's not just business. It's supposed to be something you enjoy, and they play it for their ancestors. And I think it gave me such a new perspective on the sport and why I love it. And, you know, I play it and I go out and I smile now when I play. I'm not so serious. So it's not such a perfectionist anymore. And I think being surrounded by people who could push that out of me was very, very helpful. And I, you know, it just comes back, like I said, I'm so full of gratitude for the people that I've met here, because I had people like that at Carolina as well, but here especially, I think I met them at the right point in my life where they could help me out of that slump, and, you know, teach me, you know, these new life lessons and how to be a better teammate person. And, you know, that's fed into me being a better goalie, I think. So,
amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. What was it, is what we're talking about right now, but kind of what went into your decision to transfer, or was there other things going on for you?
For me, it was mostly, you know, I had a great goalie in front of me who had 1 more year of eligibility. And in the timeline that I had, I was going to be a senior. And then if I wanted to use all of my eligibility, I would have to do grad school. And then, you know, finances play into that. You know, grad school is very expensive. And
Sure.
for me, I was like, I just wanted to play really, really badly because of how competitive I was. And, you know, I thought that if I wanted to make that dream come true, I would have to make that change. And I think it's such a thing that's not talked about enough because, you know, there's stigmas around transferring, but, you know, my teammates at Carolina were so supportive of my transfer because they just wanted me to be happy and, you know, have the opportunity to play the game that I love, on the field. And, you know, some people's transfers go smoothly, some people don't, but, you know, I had teammates sit down with me and like go through my options with me and like help me pick the school that I wanted to go to, which I was so lucky to have those people. So, you know, it was largely that. And, coming to upstate New York, I have family from here. I have family in Jersey. So, you know, that definitely played a decision in or factor in my decision.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's cool. You got that support, you know, that's good to hear. You mentioned working with a sports psychologist, at Syracuse, which is right at Syracuse. Was it?
Yes.
Yeah. Great resource. I'm curious, if there's any other lessons that he or she has taught you, that you'd want to share.
Yeah, so I work with a guy named Dr. T's out of Baltimore. He actually works with a lot of PLL players and professional athletes. He's an amazing sports psychologist. But when I first met him, he looked at me and he goes, "I really want to talk to you later." Because when he first met me, he was like, "I know where you're from and I really want to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh no, okay." But when I first started talking to him, he was like, "I can tell you're really hard on yourself." And I was like, "Yeah," but I was like, most D1 athletes are. And I was like, "What's so special about that?" And he goes, "You are so close to getting where you need to be, but you need to figure out how to change your mind process of using that perfectionism to benefit you instead of holding you back." And so he taught me, like, those affirmations I do before games. He taught me that, you know, writing down, it's actually like statistically proven to help benefit you more than if you don't. So like those little tips and tricks he's taught me, and then managing my emotions. And, you know, when I play, I am an emotional goalie, and like, I very much go to bat for my defenders if I don't think they got what they deserved in a game, or, you know, like obviously in a respectful way, but, you know, or sometimes I can outwardly show that I'm frustrated that I didn't do my job right because of my perfectionism. So he's taught me how to kind of rein that in, but then also like channel it into other areas of like maybe like IPR, like positivity, communication, talking through it, those sorts of things.
Awesome. Dr. T, I'll have to get him, try to get him on the podcast here. I would love to chat with that guy.
I'll send him.
All right. You send him my way, huh? I'll make a little note about that. Cool. Yeah, that sounds amazing. And a lot of those lessons, especially writing it down, I talked to another sports psychologist, and she said, you build up this confidence reservoir, So you kind of like write down like all these things that make you, you know, a great goalie, or even a great person, or a great husband, or a great sister, or a great, you know, whatever role in life we're talking about. And then when you get down, right, because it happens in life, you give up some goals or you have a bad situation, you kind of feel down, like, all right, now I can go back and review this reservoir and just kind of like, oh yeah, like I am a great goalie, or great brother, what have you.
Absolutely.
So, well, very cool. I got some saves. Can we look at some saves?
Sure.
Who doesn't love saves, huh?
Exactly.
All right, hang on a second. This is from the game against your good friend and Lax Goalie Rat sponsored goalie, Madison Doucette, who's awesome.
The best. She's the best.
First of all, you got some numbers there on the throw card tape. I'd love to hear the story behind those.
Yeah, those are numbers of some of my teammates who had career-ending injuries. 17, Mackenzie Olson, 13, Caroline Rader, 44, Emma Ward, 43, Sierra Cockerell, and then I also had 30 and 24 on my wrist, 30 being Kenzie Harris and 24 being my other best friend, Emma Tyrell. So, and then I also below that, I have Desi written, which he passed away from cancer, and I got to meet him at Carolina, and he played a very big role in the motto at Carolina, which is "We Get To," which, you know, I've taken with me to this program as well, and it's something that's very much impacted my life, and I'm very, very grateful I got to meet him.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I think I talked to Taylor about that. We get to. It's not like we have to, right? It's we get to. We get to play lacrosse. We get to practice. We get to run these stairs. So I love that attitude. Yeah. In case anyone's kind of wondering what that was all about. So 223.
Kuykendall gets it down low with a shot that time. Oh.
That's an amazing save. When we talk about kind of your style of play and kind of the boys' style of play of, like, I don't know, some call it flopping, but you know, others call it just kind of getting the body behind the ball. I mean, this is a beautiful, like that is headed to the low corner, and bam, you get down there, kind of, I don't know, does it hit your foot? Like, talk me through this save here.
Yeah, that I remember that hitting my leg. But Erin Kuykendall, she's a very, very good shooter, and Northwestern specifically is very good at off-stick hip area. So I knew going into this game that an adjustment I had to make from the previous time I played them, that if I was going to do that, I would have to fully extend my leg out. I couldn't just drop, because sometimes I just drop and try and get my hands there instead of my full body. So I knew that whatever movement I had to make it 100% to just try and take up space. And so that was like when she was going, I knew she was going in that area, and I was reading the ball, but I was just like, my leg moved faster than my hands, and thankfully I got a piece of it. So
yeah, that's awesome. Now, when you're set up right here, you know, giving up, you've got the near side covered, giving up all far side. In your mind, do you know that? Are you saying like, all right, I know what I'm giving up, and then as soon as she shoots, I'm going to attack it, or no, just read and react?
I think for this specific situation, I'm usually better at centering myself, because I have a step system where I take a step off pipe, which is a smaller step, and then a bigger step to get to my 45. Mm-hmm. But she typically likes to do crease rolls. So I was thinking she was going to go back, but then when she started going over, you can see right when she shot, I started to step a little bit. But she kind of caught me mid-step. So I think I wasn't really in the proper positioning where I normally am, but I got lucky, and not really lucky, but I used my reaction to get there. So.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. I mean, and when a shooter, you know, I don't know in the women's game, probably as well, but like when a shooter rips one off a defender's hip, like right off the hip, sometimes it's hard to pick up that release, and she's so close. And like, so I would say that, you know, that reaction is amazing. Yeah. Just getting that leg there. Beautiful save.
Thank you.
Love that one. All right. Hang on. What happened to my notes? The page turned. All right. 313. I think this is an 8 meter. Yeah. So this is an 8 meter. Mm-hmm. I would love to hear your sort of approach to 8 meters. What goes through your head? You got like a little pre thing that you do? Talk to me about that.
So for 8 meters, I play a base that's pretty much even with my shoulders. I don't really have a wide base. I'm not like super tall, so I think you know, just a little bit outside your shoulders is the best positioning for me personally. I take just one step up, not like too far, but not too shallow. It's like an in between a high arc and like a low arc. So I take one step up, but I step back. You can see me before when they get an 8 meter, I step back into the cage so I can center myself. Like when she's starting to set up after the ref calls it, I step back and then I step forward. And I always like grab my chest guard a little bit to, like, you know, it's just like a position reset. A lot of goalies do it. Taylor does it too. I think I honestly like learned it from her, if I'm being honest, but
like you just move the chest guard around a little.
Yeah, you kind of just like grab your chest a little and just like take a deep breath, and then, like, you know, then you get into your positioning, but
yeah,
that's how I set up mostly.
Awesome. And based on her body language in this particular play, like, it's pretty clear she's going to rip it, right? You know, she's not running in, right? So do you do something a little bit different in that way, or are you just kind of mentally set for a shot right away?
I think it's more of a mental thing. I knew she's going to shoot it immediately. For her specifically, though, I believe that's Jill Girardi. She's a very good shooter, but I also scouted her and I knew that she did her 8 meters low. So when she winds up, you can't see it because I have sweatpants on, but I do bend my knees. Actually, you can't see it. I do bend my knees a little bit more because I knew I was kind of assuming she was going to go low, which she did. So that helped me.
There you go. Yeah. And even, like, I don't know, it kind of looks just like to the shoulder. You can kind of just, if you're reading the shoulders and the angle of the stick, like it's coming down low, and I can kind of see you know, beat her low and bam, make a nice save, but it kind of sneaks through your legs, huh?
Yeah. So it like hit my like stick and then hit my leg, and then it died right next to me, which was nice, but those are the worst.
Did the sweatpants kill it?
I think it did. Honestly, I really do think it did. So my defender who's standing right next to me, she's like, the ball's right next to you, Kimber. The ball's right next to you. Because I had no idea where it went for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There we go. And hang on, 345 is the next one. Let's check this one out.
I just seen that ball all the way in.
Gilbert, save, Hower.
Yeah, dome shot, huh?
Yeah, that was a dope shot.
That's Lauren Gilbert, like one of the best scorers in the league, from, oh man, nearly point blank range, and bam, right off the dome. Sometimes that can wake you up as a goalie.
Yeah.
I don't know how that one felt.
It was actually funny because before the game, Emma Ward, because she can't play, she's been working with me a lot with shooting, and I was talking to her, Kayla and Kenzie, before the game started, and she has such a fast release off stick hip. So one of the things we talked about before the game was that just move your body, like move your body first if she's just coming around, because if I can get my body there, like, she's just going to hit me. So I did cheat a little bit to the left when she rolled over, and it just ended up hitting me right in the head. So I honestly didn't really see where it was going, because once they release it and it starts going towards your heads, you know, where you're like, I don't really know what to do. So you kind of just like soak it in, but it definitely, I shake my head after it. So it woke me up a little, but it didn't hurt too bad. So.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I can get dangerous sometimes taking one right to the dome in terms of concussions. Like, I don't know if you've had to deal with that, but I had one concussion that it just got me in the wrong way. And man, I don't recommend going through that.
Yeah.
All right. So that was 345.
Back to Gilbert, save Hower. She's trying to do everything here, and she has started off this second half very strong.
This is another beautiful save. So on this one, if you're just listening to the audio, like, I think that's Lauren Gilbert again, gets fed right on the crease, fakes high. And at this point, you sort of come out. And I'm curious when you sort of come out at the shooter. What's your strategy on that?
So if for me, and this is something like I mentioned earlier, I had to practice a lot this year, was my patience, because sometimes I would come out too early and I would give up way too much space. But in this situation, because she caught it and was only, I think, at least 2 feet in front of me, in those situations, and like I just mentioned with her specifically, I wanted to get my body there because I knew where she wanted to shoot. So when she turned, I wanted to step up and be big. And then I kind of like moved my body across because I wanted to take away that hip space area of the off hip. But she ended up hitting like kind of like in the rib area. But I think when she just has to turn and shoot, like, you know, she doesn't have a second really to like fake, because she has 4 defenders, I think, crashing in on her. So
yeah, right. The entire team.
Up, being big and, you know, getting rid of that space that she wants was what was going through my head in that moment.
Yeah, well, that's a great save. And, when the shooter is locked in to like a specific spot, like, she basically has to shoot right here. There's so many defenders crashing in. Like it is a great time to come up and cut down that angle and just give her less goal to shoot at. And so I a lot of goalies ask me, well, when do I come out? And it's tough to say, like, a specific, my answer is always, it depends, but like giving situations where, this is a good scenario to come out, I think helps kids learn. So
I agree.
there you go. And nice save. I think that's it. One other thing. So I think as every goalie who has not ended their season in a national championship, I think they can relate to that feeling right there.
Yeah.
Tell me about what's going through your head right there.
I think they scored a goal at the very, very end. I think there was like 3 seconds left. And for me, during this whole game, something I was actually very proud of myself is that I never once got frustrated with myself, with our defense, or even with our offense. And we were really struggling on the offensive side this game. But, our defense this whole game, none of us yelled at each other once. We were very calm. We were very collected. And I was actually surprised at how calm I was, because that is something I've been working on. And, I was positive the whole game, even though we were down by like 10 at one point. Like I still didn't feel that way really necessarily on the inside. And then once the ringer rang, or whatever it is,
Final horn, final whistle.
Yeah, when the final whistle blew, I got so emotional so quickly. And I'm actually, you can't see it because my head's down, but I am crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just because I wanted so badly for the people, that were my seniors and that I loved. And, as I wrote in my letter, I had such a connection with the people at this school. And I wanted to get back to the, national championship for them and for the alumni that graduated. So, I think it was just an overwhelming feeling of like, being, sad, and not necessarily disappointed in anyone or anything, but it, just sad, because lacrosse is an amazing game, but it also is a heartbreaking game sometimes. And I think, that was a moment where I just had to take a second and let that emotion out. And my teammate actually, they showed it a little later, but she comes up and she hugs me, and she's just kind of like holding me and, working through those emotions.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I've gone through that as well, not having won the national championship, and even, you got some extra time to play. I mean, I think when it hit me the strongest was my final year, final game, like, oh, it's all over. And it hits you. Yeah, it's tough, but thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. That was great. I think I got all my questions. Oh, there was one other question I wanted to ask you. So earlier in the year, you were splitting time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because, some goalies, it's a very specific arrangement. And, some goalies always ask me for like, how do I guess if you're the starter, if you're playing in the first quarter, it's, it's kind of the same. But if you're playing in the second, it's a little bit different, just in terms of preparation, staying in the game, and getting ready to go in. Talk to me a little bit about splitting time.
Yeah. So, splitting time was the thing that the coaches thought would be the best for this team. And, Delaney and I, who's my co-goalie, we have very, very different styles. So one of the things they talked about us in the office was that, we think having 2 goalies with 2 very different styles could throw a team off. So it could be like, a tactical advantage that we wanted to, try out in the beginning of the season and see how it went. And for me, when they gave me the second half, a lot of people, second halves can be hard because, you are sitting for the first half, and then you have to get dialed in and then go into the game, regardless of what the score was, whether it be tied, you'd be down, or you'd be up. So for me, the only reason not the only reason, but one of the big reasons why I think I could do well when I went in the second half is because my entire career at Carolina, my job was, if, the goalie in front of me wasn't performing well, I would have to get thrown into games to help out. And so, having that experience as a backup goalie, and then going in very high intense games, I could dial in very quickly, but also I could also flush things that happen very quickly. So, going in the second half, I just knew like, all right, what happened in the first half happened. And also observations you can make, like, this is how they're shooting, being like, drawn into that. And like, this is what's working well for the defense. This is what isn't. And, like staying engaged, but also staying calm. But yeah, it was also a big learning curve for me too, because, going from, I've always been a second half goalie, and then having to go to a starting goalie in the Duke game, we started off that game really rough, but being a second half goalie, I think helped us, especially in that game, because then I started getting on fire towards the end of the game, which it took me a while this season to become a first and a second half goalie which I think is just experience.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. By the time you hit the second half, you're like, all right, I know how to do this.
Yeah. I'm like, that's but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of goalies, they talk to me about, how do I stay like in the game in the first half. Right. And so that can be a challenge, especially when you're young. I think less of a challenge when you're in college, because you're just like naturally, you're more of an adult and you're like into the game and you're rooting on your team. But that can be like a main tip for those, just be into the game. Like, don't be looking at the sidelines and looking around and just, really cheer on your teammates and be 100% there.
Absolutely. And I think this team does a really good job of that and like supporting each other, and the goalies support each other and cheer for each other, which is awesome because some goalies programs don't have that.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I think, I'm sure your relationship with Delaney, like you push each other, but then you're probably also your guys' biggest fans.
Yeah. But Delaney she has such a hard work ethic, like one of the hardest work ethics I've ever seen, her and her sister Savannah. So, she has pushed me and made me a better goalie in so many different ways. And I think her, but, we do have very different styles, but, on a day-to-day basis, like I can learn from her and like her positivity and like those sorts of things. So I think you can always look at another goalie regardless of what style they play and like learn something from them, because, you can always get better in every area.
100% agree. 100% agree. Kimber, that was amazing. I think we touched on everything, huh? Is there any other stories or any other questions you were hoping I'd ask?
I think we touched on everything. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah. If you had to leave the kids out there with one final piece of advice, what would that be?
I think it's what I said earlier that my coach Kayla said to me, but just play with joy in your heart and have fun, and always remember why you picked up the stick in the first place.
Very well said. I feel a little joy in my heart right now. Thank you. Thank you for talking lacrosse with me for the last hour. That was tons of fun. Kimber, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.